Hey. That's fine. I'm fine with saying yay. I'm so glad that you're here, Councilman Becton, because I was thinking that we were going to have to tack these meetings onto the end of a council meeting at some point. So, all right. So we are going to call to order. Everyone has a packet in front of them, and they were given, and there's a letter on top, and then separated with paper clips, there are 3 other packets, and we are going to take these up in the order of Renew Arlington, that's on the top. The one that you were given separately, the thicker packet, is the King Sutel Crossing. We will take up second. And then the Jacksonville International Airport, JIA CRA, we will take up third. And so we will start with Renew Arlington, and I will call to order the Renew Arlington Community Redevelopment Agency Board meeting for Tuesday, August 8th. And we will go around and make introductions on the first one. We won't do introductions every single time, even though that's what the agenda indicates. And but we will recognize the various vice chairs for each. So, Councilman Anderson.
Greg Anderson, at-large Group 4.
Joyce Morgan, Vice Chair for Renew Arlington.
Regina Gaffin, District 7.
Lori Boyer, District 5.
Al Ferrero, District 2.
Garrett Dennis, District 9.
Aaron Bowman, District 3.
Anna Lopez Brochet, Group 1.
Sam Newby, Group 5.
Reginald Brown, District 10.
Danny Beckton, District 11.
Katrina Brown, District 8.
Jim Love, District 14.
John Crestone, at-large Group 2.
Bill Gulliver, District 13.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. Okay, for our action items, some of these are similar across all of these CRAs, but we will definitely point out those differences. For all of them, we are going to be taking up an amendment to the bylaws to adjust the quorum from 14 to 13, a supermajority. It doesn't give us a lot more room, but a little bit more flexibility, and we would have been able to get started earlier, as well as advertisement. And then all of them, we will be taking up an amended budget for 16-17 and a proposed budget for 17-18. We'll discuss any other differences with each one that do come up. But the first item behind that particular agenda is Resolution RACRA 2017-01 to amend the quorum from 14 to 13, and also to indicate, and I don't have, so the page 2 that's supposed to be on the back of page 1 is blank. Yeah, I have a separate set, but the ones that were in front of us don't have page 2 of 2 on the back of page 1 of 1. Yes, Mr. Wendland.
Kirk Wendland, Office of Economic Development. It looks like there's been a problem on some of the last minute copying. I will tell you that on 01, as you said, the amendment is to move the quorum from 14 to 13, and then you modified section 3.6 to take out the requirement that the notice be made in the Florida Times Union and replace that with a newspaper of general circulation. This was an amendment you did for the JIA CRA earlier this year when you met as the JIA CRA. And I'm sorry, the second part, the notice of, from Florida Times Union to the newspaper for general circulation. You did that earlier in the JIA CRA, and we were asked to do that in both the Renew Arlington and the King's Hotel one as well. And again, in all three of these, you'll see also the quorum amendment from 14 to 13.
Okay. Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam President. I'll go ahead and make the motion if you'll come back to me because I have some questions. So I move that we approve 17-01.
I have a motion and a second on the CRA 2017-01 for Renew Arlington.
Okay.
And then
Thank
Mr.
you.
Anderson.
Thanks so much. So the only changes are those two administrative changes?
Yes, sir.
And then I think the council president indicated there was a budget that we needed to approve and one that needed to be amended. Is that also a later action?
Through the chair to Councilman Anderson, yes, that's a later resolution.
So the only action that you're really requesting now is these two administrative changes?
In this resolution, Resolution 217-01, yes.
Okay, well, I'll obviously support that. Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Morgan? Is that? Oh, okay. So, Mr. Wendland, is someone making copies of the pages that we don't have?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any other questions on Resolution RA-CRA 2017-01? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on this particular action item before we proceed? No public comment? Okay. All in favor of the resolution, please say aye. Opposed? Oh, we have it on the, okay, great. If you could please open the ballot then.
$15 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you have passed RA-CRA 01. Now, moving on to Resolution RA-CRA 2017-02, which is to approve the scope of services for the Master Stormwater Plan for Renew Arlington. Mr. Wendland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This resolution would authorize Public Works to enter into a contract for a master stormwater management plan within the Renew Arlington CRA boundaries. A master stormwater plan in an area can be very helpful to developers as you're trying to attract developers to the area. It was something that the city of Jacksonville did successfully in the Brooklyn area. This was contemplated and specifically called out in the Renew Arlington plan. The resolution before you says not to exceed $125,000. That's what the advisory board approved when it was before them. Subsequent to that, we've worked with CDM Smith in conjunction with Public Works. They have a contract currently with Public Works, so this would kind of piggyback that existing contract. And through those negotiations, the fees have come in at $110,000. So ultimately, the budget that you will see in 03 is for $110,000. But again, at the time, the resolution that was approved by the advisory board said not to exceed $125,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wendland. Councilwoman Morgan.
Thank you so much. Madam President, I'd like to move Resolution RA-CRA 2017-02.
I have a motion and a second on RA-CRA 2017-02. I see no one else in the queue with questions. Mr. Anderson.
Just quickly, thank you. Through the President, Ms. Morgan, you're on the advisory committee, and so the group has reviewed this, and your group is still in support of this.
Yes, the Renew Arlington CRA Advisory Committee has already approved this, and in fact, it is already written in our CRA. So
perfect.
Everything is great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I have no one else in the queue for questions on RA-CRA 2017-02. Please open the ballot. Oh. Is there any public comment before we vote on 2017? There is no public comment. Thank you.
15 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you've passed RACRA 2017-02. Moving on to 2017's RACRA 2017-03, which this one would be a little bit more challenging, and I guess we have them coming around. So we'll wait till everyone has them, unless you have some general description that you would like to offer, Mr. Wendland.
Well, I do. I'll mention one thing. This is, and you're going to see again, all three of these amendments to the 2016-17 budget. The one thing I will mention, you should all have in front of you somewhere a little half-sheet yellow piece of paper. These are basically the 4 things, and so we'll refer to this in all 3 of them. There's 4 things that you can do when there's TIF funds left, if you will, at come 9/30 at the end of the year. The funds can be returned to the taxing authority, in this case, the general fund. I think there's a consensus among the 3 vice chairs that none of them wanted to see that. The funds can be used to reduce debt. They can be deposited into an escrow account for reducing debt later, or the funds can be appropriated to a specific project contained in the redevelopment plan that will be completed in 3 years. So this is kind of always a challenge, I guess, if you will, when it comes to the CRAs and the timing at the end of the year, trying to make sure that we address the balance of funds for the remainder of the 16-17 year and make sure they're properly appropriated. So before I go into the specifics of the Renew Arlington, I guess, is there any questions just on the general process? Okay. So there's several things going on here in 2017-03. First, there was an adjustment to the actual revenues. So the revenues came up a bit short in the CRA this year by $6,769 from what was budgeted to what was actual. And then the operating expenses, there was some excess. Remember, this is the first year that within these CRA budgets we've actually allocated operating expenses, so I guess we were a little conservative. We ended up, we think budgetarily there's an excess of about $32,867 is the estimate this year. The majority of it in this one is related to legal costs that weren't nearly as much as we anticipated. Then we have the amount that was shown at the start of the year as planned authorized projects to be determined. That's $252,013. So when you aggregate all 3 of those, the shortfall in revenue, the excess in operating expenses and the plan authorized projects, there's $278,111 that need to get appropriated before the end of the year, or they would go back to the taxing authority because there is no debt currently or future to be paid within there. So we are recommending what you see in the amended budget column. That is to fund the stormwater management plan that we just talked about for $110,000. We'd also like to do a traffic study in that area for $15,000. We need to have that information in order to apply for some grants that we want to apply for within that area. And then the balance, the $153,111, would go into the Complete Streets project that the advisory board has been working through. And again, as mentioned before, your vice chair and Councilman Crescent-Benny as well attend all of these advisory board meetings, and I think your vice chair will concur that these are the recommendations that the advisory board has made.
Great. Thank you. Councilwoman Boyer.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Wendland. The recommendation, so first of all, so I'm understanding that the actual revenue was 6,000 less than what had been anticipated.
That is correct.
And one of the challenges we have in some of these areas, and I know we've talked about them downtown other places, is that if you have a challenged area that is declining, the property values are going down, so you're not actually getting revenue in the increment that you can use to do things. So I know, like in the case of JIA, your focus initially was on job creation and new development, so that you could then use that additional revenue to do some of the infrastructure. It appears that the focus here is infrastructure first, planning and infrastructure first. Give me some background from advisory board meetings. Is there a component to grow revenue as you are doing the studies? I mean, is there a part of the budget that's somehow being allocated to growing the tax value in the district today so that next year we have more revenue?
Yes, through the chair, great question to Member Boyer. Yes, there's a lot of discussion about that. The Renew Arlington CRA is a little bit different. Just if you look at the boundaries are a little more linear, where JIA CRA is obviously very large, had a lot of industrial property opportunities. Arlington's not quite as much that way. And so the initial theory was that we need to get, first of all, that stormwater management plan we think will go to some of the things that you're talking about to be able to attract some development in the area. The Complete Streets project is one that has been looked at as really needing, there's a lot of safety issues in the area. There's a lot of just aesthetic issues that are hampering development in that area. So while this may be a little bit different approach, I think we're still trying to attract and do the same thing you're talking about.
If I may, so I don't have a problem with the request and support the request, but what I would just ask is if you would take the message back to the advisory board. I would be interested in seeing if next year, I see facade grant program on here. I know we just had a Northwest Economic Development Trust Fund grant where we put in a water line for someone, which facilitated redevelopment in an area where you wouldn't otherwise redevelop. I'd at least ask that the advisory board have a discussion about whether there is some portion of the budget that should be allocated next year or the following year to some kind of current grant facilitation of redevelopment to get things jump-started.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Morgan.
Thank you so much. Through the president to Ms. Boyer, I believe that we are, in fact, trying to go that way, exactly what you're talking about with the facade grant program. And the Complete Streets also, I think, will help with that redevelopment and really focus on those kinds of things, because the advisory board is very, very clear on their mission and making sure that we are redeveloping this area. And with the project that JU is doing, which is right on University Boulevard, next year that will help us increase this amount, and you can see the difference that that project at JU is going to help us do. So yes, we are looking at all of those things and being very cognizant and aware of where we need to go. But thank you so much. We appreciate that.
Okay. I have no one else in the queue for Resolution RACRA 2017-03. Is there any public comment on this particular resolution? No public comment. Ms. Morgan.
Yes, thank you so much. Then I would like to move this resolution, RACRA 2017-03.
I have a motion and a second on the resolution, and no public comment on the resolution. Please open the ballot and record your vote.
$15 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you have passed 2017-03 for Renew Arlington. Moving on in action items, we have 2017-2018 proposed budget, which is Resolution RA-CRA 2017-04. Do I have a motion on this resolution? I have a motion and a second. Mr. Wendland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the revenues, this is for 2017-18. You will be, if you approve this, you're basically then recommending it to the Finance Committee, and ultimately City Council will adopt in the budget. So revenues jump next year in Renew Arlington to $554,000. You see our operating expenses, which have been adjusted based on a little more knowledge that we had from last year. So those are down to some extent. The transfer out to general fund, that $2,500, just all three of them have to have their own independent audit. And then, as Ken previously mentioned, the really two new line items for next year would be a $50,000 facade grant program, and then adding to the $153,000 approved in the 16-17 budget would be another $438,690 for the Complete Streets Phase 2.
Great. Councilwoman Boyer.
Through the chair to Mr. Wendland. I know with the facade grant program we have downtown, we delegated to the Downtown Investment Authority the authority for that board to make decisions on the grants. I don't believe the JIA, the Renew Arlington Advisory Board, has the unique, distinct authority to approve the grants. So that would mean these grants would be coming back to City Council for approval of the detail in the packets. Can you work with the advisory board and perhaps bring back some legislation to us that might create parameters and authorize them to review and approve the grants? Because it seems to me like it's going to get really cumbersome if we're bringing back facade grants to the full body.
Through the chair to Member Boyer, that's exactly what we plan to do, yes, absolutely.
Councilman Crescent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Wendland. Mr. Wendland, remind me about what is the supervision allocation again?
Through the chair to Mr. Crescent, the supervision allocation is basically OED staff time. So we allocate, there's 3 different people who specifically work on the CRAs, and we allocate out their, so we sit down with budget and we say, here's how much percentage of their time is allocated towards the CRAs, and then they take their salaries, benefits, and all their associated costs, and they come back and give us the calculation.
So which 3 people are those?
Karen's time, Corey's time, who works on our website, et cetera, and then Angela's time, who's our administrative assistant.
So what percentage of time are they allocating?
Karen's time is 100% allocated to the 3 CRAs. I believe Angela, we take 20, and I think Corey, we take 20. Well, I'm sorry, Angie's 50 and Corey is 10. Karen is 100%. The only difference when we get to JIA CRA, because we have a lot of active projects that we're monitoring, then we do allocate some of our finance time to that as well.
Okay. So all 3 of them combined is about, what, $175,000?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I have no other questions on this particular resolution, and before we open the queue to record our vote, is there any public comment on this resolution? Seeing none, please open the ballot and record your vote.
15 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you've passed RA-CRA 2017-04 for the 2017-18 proposed budget. Is there any new business for the Renew Arlington CRA? Seeing none, are there any public comments? None? Okay. Renew Arlington CRA meeting is adjourned. We are moving on to the King's Hotel, and Mr. Wendland, do you understand that this packet is complete or not complete or needs any adjustment?
It is my understanding this one has been double-sided copy.
Great. Okay, so we are calling to order the King Sutel Crossing CRA Board meeting for Tuesday, August 8th. And I would like to recognize my vice chair in this particular CRA, Councilman Brown. And we carry forward the introductions that we made earlier, and so we will move right into the action items. The first of which is the quorum and advertisement resolution, KSC CRA 2017-02. I have a motion and a second for this particular resolution. And see no one in the queue for questions. This is the same as what we just approved in Renew Arlington. Is there any public comment on this particular resolution? Seeing no public comment, please open the ballot and record your vote.
15 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you have passed ASCRA 2017-02. Okay, we are going to move into the remaining resolutions that we have before us, which are 2017-03, 04, and 05 for King Sutel Crossing. But I'd like to ask Mr. Wendland to start with an overview of the project, which actually affects all of these resolutions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, 2017-03, there's several things going on here. So what I'd like to do is kind of go over it. Actually ask Tom Fallon to come up and give you a description, and then we'll come back and answer your questions on it. So this is the Gateway Sutel Norfolk project. The King Sutel Crossing Plan, which was adopted in 2008, specifically calls out this project at the intersection of Norfolk and Sutel. It's on pages 25 and 33. We've been working with your Vice Chairman Brown, for quite some time, as well as Public Works, on defining the scope. As we got done with it this week or last week actually, and we're coming together with it, we've noticed that there was kind of a technical challenge, and that a portion of the project, as defined, would extend beyond the defined boundaries of the CRA. If you go to the last map, the last page of this packet, not the whole packet of King Sutel, but the last, kind of the pink and green color on the map, you will see that, again, the plan defined or contemplated a project at the intersection, but as we worked through it, it was determined that really doing just the intersection, we really needed to work on the lead-in to, if you will, those intersections, or that intersection. So the part in green is the part that is not within the defined boundaries as they exist today. We've talked with OGC. What we are proposing to you as part of this resolution is that you, in Section 3 of the resolution, recommends that you, as the CRA board, recommend to your friends on City Council that they extend the boundaries to include this right-of-way. It would not include any new private property. You wouldn't have to adjust the base, anything like that. It would include just approximately the 80-foot right-of-way, about 850 feet one way and 250 feet another way. And again, that's kind of depicted, if you will. There's more detailed maps in front of it, but it's depicted in the green on the map that you see. So the funding for this project is all in place. It's all from the CRA. In 15-16, you allocated $381,351. When we get to Resolution 04, the 16-17 budget, there's a balance left of $458,373 that we're recommending go to this. And then next year's budget, 17-18, has $547,900 $114. Total project, $1,386,838 dollars. So I'm going to let Tom come up and kind of give you a little more detail on the project itself, and then we'll address the questions you have.
I'm Tom Fallon from the Public Works Department. Pleased to present to you all kind of the concept that you're looking at, hopefully within the packet, that kind of details the improvements that we intend to make at this intersection. So today, if you come up Sutel and you intersect with Norfolk Boulevard, what you would see is two very distinctly different roadway cross sections on each side. In the south, if you look toward that direction, you would see very wide travel lanes, and you would also see very wide medians. And then if you looked to the north, what you would see is basically an undivided travel lanes. Once again, the travel lanes are very wide, but they are undivided, and the traffic signal that you'd be looking at is what we would call a traffic signal that's being held up by concrete poles with strain wires, and so it doesn't actually present a very unique, presentable appearance when you look at that intersection. Of course, it's a key intersection for this area of the city. It serves as a gateway. So the improvements that we have discussed and contemplated basically tries to make a uniform cross section on the lanes. So once again, if you're traveling to Sutel and you enter at the Norfolk Boulevard intersection, what you would see as far as the traffic signal, what we are proposing that would be a mast arm signal, which is much more common, where you see you don't have the strain poles. And then if you look either south or north, you would see a little bit more restricted travel lane. So you look at 11-foot travel lane widths, which we believe helps control speed. And then you would see a much more uniform median width of more like 12 feet, such that you have a consistent view on each side. And then we would have essentially some parallel parking along those corridors where they can logically be placed. There is a segment that exists right now, and we don't prefer it, where there is some perpendicular parking to the travel way near one of the church facilities that obviously can become a little attractant toward vehicular crashes from time to time. So the intersection itself, which was contemplated in 2008, led us to believe that this was contemplated within the master plan. And then on linear projects, you always look for a logical termination point for where you can create those improvements. And so what you'd see on the north contemplates going up to the intersection with Fredericksburg, and on the south, on the north going to Fredericksburg, and on the south going to Rochdale Road. So it seemed to be a very logical place to extend those improvements and to make a very significant improvement on this intersection. Subject to your questions, I am certainly available.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon and Mr. Wendland, for the project overview. Could I ask someone to offer a motion on the project, and then there are a number of folks in the queue for 2017-03? I have a motion and a second. Mr. Brown, did you want to speak first?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I support this project. We have worked diligently together to address this particular intersection. And for me, and the reason I support this particular bill is that if we were to only focus on the intersection, the crosswalks, we would still leave the community in what I call an unsafe peril in terms of traffic and pedestrian crosswalks. And as stated, we're not looking to go inside of the community. We're just trying to, if you would, repair and accommodate a better pedestrian as well as vehicle travel at that particular location. If you are familiar with the area at all, you will agree that one area you can probably, in terms of cars, you can probably put 6 cars going across the street. All right, there's no lines of anything that tells folks where to go. And so what we're looking at doing on both sides is putting islands in this area, but we cannot put the islands there right now to give it character because it's outside of the boundaries. And so I hope that you all are with me in terms of making this a great project. We worked hard and diligent in terms of 3 years of savings to get the money there to make this a successful project. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Ms. Boyer.
Thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Grandin. Is Ms. Grandin here? I can't see her there. Okay. So help me understand how this fits in 163. So I'm thinking back. So I have two questions really as I'm thinking through this. First of all, I support the concept of the project. What I'm trying to get and my arms around is the expansion of the boundaries and using money that we've already collected under a previous boundary for plan authorized projects within that boundary to fund something in an expanded boundary area. Because I remember on the downtown CRAs, when we combined them, we had a cutoff date with prior to the combination. You couldn't use the money that existed prior to that in the other area. So first of all, from a statutory standpoint, can we use money that we collected in a smaller area in a bigger area, in an area that was outside the original boundary? I know we could going forward, new money. I just don't know whether we can the old money. And then the second question is, I'm just looking in the statute at the process for expanding the boundary, and it appears to me that you have to go through this whole finding of blight and necessity and public notice hearings and 90 days this and that and all that. Is that your understanding of what we have to do to be able to expand the boundary, or is there some other provision I'm not reading?
Through the chair to Board Member Boyer. To your first question, I believe that we can use the funds that have been created in the CRA as it exists now to expand into these right-of-way areas. They are just right-of-way. They were not encompassing any more private land, so there's not going to be a change in terms of the base year and that type of thing. So I think that answers the first question. And the second question, give me a synopsis of the second question just to make sure that I captured all that.
Second question is, I'm sitting here looking at 163-361, which is modification of a plan to include additional area, and it has all kinds of criteria and process that you have to go through state statute-wise to increase the boundary. And I'm asking if that is applicable or if there's some other basis that we are able to expand it.
That is a very good question. It's the governing body, which is when you sit as the city council, you are the governing body. So the CRA here would recommend to the governing body, we would like to expand the boundaries in these two areas. I believe that the scope of the redevelopment plan as it exists, probably it encompasses that, and we've stated as such in the resolution. But it's up to the governing body to determine whether or not you think that the study that was done previously would encompass this or not. Luckily, in this particular case for King's Hotel, we're going to go through an update of the plan very soon. So that's very helpful too. But in terms of the legislation does have to come from the city council, and you have to sit as the governing body and go through that. But you wouldn't have to hire an expert to determine whether or not just adding 850 feet in one direction and 250 feet of right-of-way in the other direction would meet that.
But you would have to comply with all the process requirements about the 90 days notice to this and that and all the other things that are set forth in here about doing that.
Right, you would.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Brown.
Through the chair, this question is to the Office of Economic Development Department. I was sitting here listening to your presentation, and before you started, you stated that the Sutel and Norfolk area was in the 2008 plan. Is that what you stated?
I believe that's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what was in the 2008 plan that you referenced to this particular project? Can you just tell me in detail, please?
Sure. Through the chair to Board Member Brown. there was a project in there, at that time it was called Gateway Minor. And it basically, there's not a ton of detail, to be honest, but there's two sections that are references. One, on page 25, it shows that is a intersection improvement within, there's kind of a, what they call a place district map, and it has a big star right on that. It calls it a street intersection project, and then as it gets more specific in the back, it calls it the Gateway Minor Project, Sutel and Norfolk, and it shows that intersection broadly, and then it gives some descriptions of what the project might look like, and it has about $1 million budget.
Okay, and my second question to you is, what is the cost difference from of what we're spending in CRA and the expansion part? And what I mean by that is you have two different sections. Like, what are you going to be doing in the expansion part of the right-of-way? Is it, I'm looking at it, but you're not adding any sidewalks. What are you doing in the expansion part, in the right-of-way?
I'm going to have to defer to Tom.
Once again, Tom Fallon with Public Works Department, through the chair to the board member. I guess in those areas where we are exceeding outside of the boundary of the CRA, what we are attempting to do is to maintain a uniform cross-section.
Okay.
So essentially, the way the boundary of the CRA would work, for example, right now, if you, as I tried to explain it, if you go up on it, if you look north and south, you'd see very different cross-sections.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in order for us to have a uniform cross-section through that whole area, we have to basically make logical connection points and termination points. And that's where we define the scope from Fredericksburg to Rochdale. And so essentially, all the work is contained within the existing right-of-way. And essentially, what we are proposing is that you would have a parallel parking, because there is some parking there today. We don't want to take that parking away. But we're turning it into a parallel. We think that's a safer configuration. And then you would see 11-foot travel lanes, which we think are a safer travel lane width that would encourage responsible driving. And then a raised 12-foot median, once again, 11-foot travel lane, and then essentially another 7-foot parallel parking lane. So that's kind of the look as you're driving down Norfolk in that intersection area that you would see on both sides of the intersection. So we think that that would present a very uniform appearance, and it would also encourage a little bit more traffic safety than exists right now.
Okay, and your department, Tom, how did you come to this analysis? Did you guys do like a traffic study, or how did you come up with this plan that you see the need fit in that particular area?
Ma'am, once again, through the chair to Board Member Brown, we had some discussions with Council Member Brown. We certainly looked at the master plan that was approved in 2008. There were some key components in that master plan to include the mast arm signal that I discussed, which is a very significant investment. We felt that was warranted as well. And then we had shown some concept sketches to the vice chair for the CRA in his discussion to make sure that what we were contemplating would work with that area. One of the things that came as a result of that discussion was to make sure, obviously, we're adding some medians now to one segment of that road that don't currently exist. And we wanted to make sure that we did not interfere with any access points to some of those properties on either side of the road. So we've gone kind of an iterative discussion with the vice chair to make sure that the concept that we are proposing is essentially a preferred alternative. And I think we talked to that in the concepts that you've got right now.
Okay, and my last question is to Mr. Kurt in the Economic Development Department. So if we vote today to adopt the resolution, would that encompass all of the plan, and also will we be voting on the expansion in the right-of-way for the project?
You would be, through the chair to Member Brown, you would be, as I understand it, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, you would be voting to recommend the City Council that you go through the processes described by Ms. Boyer to amend the boundaries to be able to include the project.
Okay, all right, so, you know, I just wanted to get some clarification, understanding. So I'm going to support the project today. I believe that we've been talking about through the city of Jacksonville about public safety, different streets, adding bike lanes, things that make it easier for pedestrians and also citizens to travel safe here in Jacksonville. And so I supported it. I just wanted to get some clarification on some additional information from that department. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Kurt. Thanks.
Mr. Crescenbenny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair to Mr. Brown, I'm assuming the church is in the loop on the loss of the perpendicular parking being converted to parallel parking?
Yes, I host a community meeting, and everyone is in agreement by way of the CPAC meeting. The changes.
Thank you, sir. And then through the chair to Ms. Grandin, I'm just going to follow up on where Ms. Boyer was going, because I always was under the impression that changing the boundaries was some sort of long, drawn-out process. But what I'm hearing you say today is that it's really not. As long as we want to do it as the board, we can do it.
Through the chair to Board Member Crescenbenny, yes, as sitting as the governing body, not as you're sitting today, but sitting as the City Council, if you determine that it meets the criteria and it is blighted and it makes sense to change the boundaries, you can do that. You don't have to. You don't have to hire a new consultant.
No study, no public hearing, no consultant.
Well, you have to go through the process of all the public hearings. The legislation, as Board Member Boyer pointed out in Chapter 163, but you don't have to go through the process of hiring a consultant to do that.
And is that because it's government property, or would it make a difference whether it was private or government property?
Well, in this case, it's because it's a pretty small amount of increase. It's a 2,300 acre CRA, and this is just a little increase in the length of it right around that one project that was identified. So it still encompasses, I would say, the spirit of the blight study in terms of what it's trying to accomplish in making that a gateway for that community.
Okay. Was the area that's being annexed part of the original blight study or not?
I would. It probably, if you
don't know, you can say I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay,
yes, although I was not a part, through the chair, although I was not a part of the initial committee because I was not here. That was Councilwoman Mia Jones. If you look at the original map, it does the entranceway into the Sherwood community as well as the Harborview community was a part of the original design.
All right, so going back to Ms. Grandin. Ms. Grandin, you didn't answer my question. The question was, does it make a difference whether it's right-of-way, city-owned right-of-way, or park land or something versus private property, or does it not make a difference as long as this board decides they want to make the annexation or the addition, we can do whatever?
Through the chair to Board Member Crescenbenny, it doesn't make a difference. It depends on what the governing body thinks is appropriate and related to what you've already found.
You've given me some ideas.
Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ms. Grandin, it does seem a slippery slope. Does the land have to be contiguous to the CRA? Are there some limiting factors to the expansion? Could it include another part of town? It just needs to be reasonable. And what you keep falling back on is this study, which it sounds like you're asking us to agree, but there will be an updated version. Do me a favor. So is this just step one? Are there other steps down the road, or if we approve this here, is it actually annexing this piece of land?
Through the chair to Board Member Anderson, no, this is not annexing it today. So what this resolution does is just recommends or requests that the City Council take up this issue of actually expanding the boundary. You can't do it as a CRA board. The governing body has to do that.
And the governing body is the City Council, not the board. So I wanted to make sure that was the distinction John was going after. So it really will take a separate action. And in between that, all these other, the process has to be completed. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So in reality, this is several months down the road before the council would see an action for this project. Is that correct?
Well, if you approve this today, I could certainly draft the legislation and file it next week.
But
and
the
and file 'em.
notice and
But
all the time frame
we
that
have to
has
go through that.
So at the very earliest, didn't you say 90 days, Ms. Boyer? A 90-day number, the very earliest 90 days from now, we could see action on this. Is that right?
That's about right, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Love.
Thank you through the chair to Councilman Brown, or Vice President in this case, Vice Chairman. I was looking at the church on Google Earth, and it seems like their only parking is in front, where we're going to change it from perpendicular to parallel. But there is a lot across the street where an empty lot that they may be parking on. Is that correct? Is that where they're parking?
No, sir. That's private property.
private.
That doesn't belong to them. They actually park on the grass and the sidewalk. There's a picture that I'm looking at that I don't know what date that and time that picture is, but you can see a car. November, but it was a car on the side. Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good. I just want to make sure because they're gonna lose, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 parking spots.
Right.
So.
And really we're being extremely kind because that's all city property. And so what I'm looking at doing right now, they have to back out into the traffic.
I know it's going to be safer. There's no doubt.
Right.
But we park a lot on city property, particularly in my neck of the woods. But I just wanted to make sure that that the church was going to be taken care of.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Boyer.
Thank you. Through the chair to, I guess, Mr. Wendland in Public Works. Let me tell you where I'm going first, so that might help with answering the question. What I'm trying to, it seems to me when I saw a draft of the agenda yesterday, there was an amount associated with just the project that's within the boundary. Have you broken out the costs of the complete portion of the project within the boundary and that portion external? And then the documentation that I have in this resolution seems to have a $48,000 design build and another $13,000, but we're appropriating $381,000 on the project. So I'd like you to explain that difference. And what I'm thinking in my head is if there is a way that in the resolution we could approve the funds for the project within the boundary and then like take any money that rolled over for the enlarged boundary, just so in the event that something were to happen where we got into a glitch about expanding the boundary, we haven't stalled the project, so that we'd be able to move forward with that portion and perhaps supplement it with other funds. I'm just trying to cover our bases in the event there is some catch in this down the road. So can you kind of differentiate project costs and the total project cost? And
once again, Tom Fallon through the chair to Board Member Boyer. Right now, we do not have what we would call a detailed cost estimate for each individual segment. We haven't gone through normally that's a result of a complete design that we would do. The $48,000 scope and fee that you referred to in your comments was basically the scope and fee to put together what we call a design criteria package, which would then in turn be used by the city to solicit design build responses. We could, and we often do, we would define within the bidding structure, for example, if we wanted to capture those costs as they are submitted, we would define, for example, a base bid. It could be a certain amount and a certain scope, and then we would add on what we call additive alternates, such that we could, if it's necessary, we could capture the costs for all those increments during the solicitation period.
And based on your experience, the kind of project you're showing here within its full boundary length, what's a range of construction costs one might see after you had it engineered? We're talking $1 million project, a $500,000 project, what kind of project are you talking about?
And once again, with the inclusion of the mast arm signal, which is a very significant investment, we think you're looking at a $1 million project right there.
Okay.
From the scope from Fredericksburg to Rochdale, with that uniform cross-section throughout to include the mast arm signal.
And the mast arm signal is at the intersection of Fredericksburg?
No, ma'am. It's right at Sutel and Norfolk.
So it's within the boundary. The mast arm signal is within the boundary. So what I'm just wondering is if it would be appropriate to amend the resolution as it is proposed to indicate that we as the CRA board are recommending to the governing body expanding the boundary, but that in terms of appropriating the funds for 16-17, we are appropriating them to the, whatever we call this project, Norfolk Boulevard Roadway Improvement Project, within the boundary with an ad alternate to expand it to include expenditure within the expanded boundary if and when that's approved by City Council. Does that sound like that might work from your perspective, or Mr. Wendland?
That's certainly something we could accommodate in the procurement method. I would probably have to defer to legal counsel as to whether or not that's an adequate approach. But we could certainly accommodate that in our process.
Ms. Grandin?
Well, you could certainly, as you probably have in your packet that I emailed out to you, I think it was only a portion of it. So we could go back to that type of language and talk about appropriating these dollars or something not to exceed these dollars in case it doesn't come up to that much. Because we figured it was about 50-50, really, was the difference between what was inside the boundary and what was outside the boundary. So we could go back to that and just say only fund what's within the boundary now, and then if the boundary were to be extended to encompass the entire project, then really that would take into effect the 17-18 budget, really. So that resolution is what we'd really have to work on as well.
Correct, but what I'm looking at is if we're taking this, it sounds to me like there is a chance that we would not be through the process to expand the boundary before the end of the fiscal year. And so I just want to make sure that we have properly addressed these funds within the fiscal year, and we have them in a project that is within the boundary and is good to go. And then we could have it that, as our board, we are recommending that if the boundary is expanded, the scope of the project is expanded as an ad alternate, and that we've said that. But that way, if the scope of the project isn't expanded, we don't have a problem with the appropriation that we made in 16-17. I don't want there to be some kind of fault with the appropriation we made right now.
All right, we could do it that way.
Well, I'm going to offer that as a motion. See where that goes.
I have a motion and a second on amendment to 2017-03 to distinguish the in the boundary and out of boundary costs associated with the project, to be able to track it accordingly and let things catch up to potentially expanding the boundary. I have 3 folks in the queue prior to this particular amendment. Are there any folks? Okay, Councilman Cressmoney, on the amendment.
I'm a little bit puzzled here. So we have before us a resolution to expand the boundary, correct?
Yes.
That also has some other things wrapped up in it.
That's right.
So if we approve that, that's going to go to the council, the governing board, the governing body, whatever you called it. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm not sure how the amendment's going to do anything, because I guess Ms. Boyer's going to have to help me out here. I'm getting a brain cramp. So the governing body is going to have before them a recommendation to expand the boundary, right?
Yes.
So tell me again, explain the amendment. What does it do?
The point of my amendment is to make sure we comply with the little yellow piece of paper. And the little yellow piece of paper says all the money in the CRA by the end of the year either gets returned to the taxing authorities, has to be appropriated to a specific project contained in the redevelopment plan, et cetera. My concern is that even if we make a recommendation that it be expanded, if we can't get through all of the state hoops before the end of the fiscal year, we will have not appropriated it to a project within the plan that can be executed within 3 years, and I don't want the money to then lapse. So I would rather that we appropriate it to a project that's within the plan and that's clearly permissible, with the idea that if our recommendation is adopted by the governing body, there can be an ad alternate that it can be expanded, the scope can be expanded. So that, it's a safe harbor. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that we're not,
Okay.
come September 31st, the other expansion doesn't really happen until October because of the various notice requirements, and if that didn't happen until October, what position did it leave us in with the balance in September?
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Boyer. I'll support it, although would you consider it a friendly amendment if we stick this little yellow piece of paper and make it go with the, no, I'm just.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Are you on the amendment, Ms. Brown? Anyone else on the amendment? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you through the chair to Ms. Boyer. So really the amendment, all it does is just makes sure that the money is not swept into the upcoming year. That's really your amendment, right? Okay. And I do want to make sure, Mr. Billy, that the budget is constructed in such a way as that the CRA funds, all of them, stay in the CRA. So this does not create a budget hole. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I guess it's just you're just being careful. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I have no one else on the amendment to the resolution. All in favor of the amendment? Is this? Okay. Say aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. I have a motion and a second on the resolution as amended, that resolution KSC CRA 2017-03, and Ms. Brown is on the queue for the resolution.
I just want to make a reference to everybody. I'm looking at what Councilman Brown is trying to do with his with the boundary expansion. When I first became a city council person, if you guys remember, we had the JIA CRA board, which they would recommend projects to the council. They kind of act as the body that we are in right now. And at the time period, it was a group that tried to get the Thomas Creek expansion within the JIA CRA. The board voted yes to expand, and the legislation came to the council, and we, the council, did not support that particular expansion because it was we didn't have a study done at the time. It was kind of more of a area expansion. This particular project, what Councilman Brown is asking for, is an expansion of the right-of-ways. So it's kind of the same concept with the Thomas Creek that happened with the JIA CRA board. Now we're acting as a board, as the council, through Councilwoman Boyer last year, through her research, she came up with that we as the council need to meet as board, and then it goes to the full council as vote. And so we've had this situation come up before with the Thomas Creek project, but we didn't support it because it was such a large expansion. And this is just the right-of-way expansion. So I just want to make that reference that this was the same process and step that went with that project. It just didn't go through because of the large area and the scope of the project. Thank you.
Mr. Beckton.
Thank you, through the chair. This question is probably to the vice chair. So with a CRA, projects, having served on a CRA advisory board, are usually about some kind of economic value in investment into the area to do things like maybe increase property values, jobs, but has some kind of commerce value. So as I look at this project on Google here, it looks very residential. I know it bounds some commercial real estate. Looks like may not. This is 2015 that I'm looking at. I don't know if it's developed today, but can you help kind of understand from someone who's not familiar with this area what kind of economic value CRA dollars going into this area or this project would have?
Well, if I could, and this is through the chair, we probably need to have a full understanding of what a CRA can be used for and what it cannot be used for. So when I found out that this is and what they call an appropriate use, I felt that it addressed the safety of the community. This is a business corridor. This is the start of, if you will, of the CRA. We're bringing in approximately, less than $500,000 a year. To suggest, and with the time limit now, in fact, I've been on the council 9 years, we were able to save the money for years, and then we realized we were out of order. And so now every project must be completed in 3 years. And if it can't, we can't appropriate the dollars for it. And so to do what you're talking about, it works for the JIA CRA because they bring in a lot more money, $7-8 million a year. What we're bringing in is $500,000 a year. And so, and I'm sure Ms. Grandin can opine on this to help clarify, but there's not just economic development. It should have an economic development intention, which it would here because it's a business corridor where we have a shopping plaza adjacent to it, and we're encouraging more development. If you look at this, you would have a senior center on one corner, a shopping plaza on the other, and with encouragement, a church on one end, and then you have two vacant parcels on the two sides. I'm sorry, so you have two areas that's active. One is a business corridor. Then you have the senior center and the church, and then on the other side, what used to be a service station. But I believe that if we make this an attractive area, folks may lure them in to what you call potential future development. But this is definitely, my understanding, one of the permissible use, and I just thought it was a good thing. And it's within what we can afford to do.
I wasn't questioning really whether it was a permissible use. I mean, that's in the eyes of the beholder in terms of projects. I guess I'm just trying to understand, there are some projects that from an economic value, safety, and those are projects we do every day with Public Works. But with CRA dollars, we're trying to create jobs, we're trying to stimulate the economics of an area, and that's what's made the JIA CRA so successful. And it kind of goes to the point that Councilwoman Boyer was making with Arlington. By putting this money in, the end game is you want to have more dollars in tax revenue the next year so you can keep generating fuel to make the CRA go forward. But if the projects that you spend dollars in are benign, and there's things we do every day and on road projects that are for safety, and we can look at it that way. But if it's benign and it doesn't help the CRA from an economic standpoint, your CRA is going to stall. In other words, it's not going to have any fuel to do the next project and the next project. It's got to be it's really helpful to look at it from a domino, so you can get to those projects that help neighborhoods and help safety. So I'm just not quite seeing it with this project in how that might help the community.
Right. Well, if I could respond, thank you. Through the chair, I would say that the smaller CRAs are, even the JIA CRA, didn't start out bringing in those dollars, all right? And so just like the JIA CRA or even Arlington, this community is hopeful with the vacant land that we have that Office of Economic Development, the Chamber will lure companies, create an interest for folks to come, and then that within itself will help with the development of the area. I can tell you, and this is why, one would argue easily and say, well, maybe Public Works can do it. Well, what I would say is that it hadn't been done, and so this is an excellent opportunity to do it. And we can look at other projects throughout the city. So this is not one that Public Works would have to do. And because, again, going back to being a permissible use, I say let's take these dollars, because it is an appropriate use. Let's use it here at this intersection and allow Public Works to find other projects within the city of Jacksonville. But also with the intent of OED and the chamber really getting aggressive to try to lure companies within these CRAs. You're right, they will not develop. And the booklet, if you had a chance to look at it, to look at the CRA, with everything that's in there, it's not about economic development, it's about community improvements. And so our neighborhood improvements, you know, so I mean, I hear what you're saying and I respect that. And I wish that we, you know, had a few millions of dollars that we can actually build a nice shopping plaza and some other things to draw other folks there, but that's just not where we're at right now. And hope to get there, but that's not where we are. Thank you.
Ms. Morgan.
Thank you so much. Through the chair, I just wanted to chime in on that. And Mr. Becton, one of the things, as Mr. Brown said, is that these CRAs, especially mine, is just starting up. So our base is very, very low. But one of the things that I thought when my CRA was established is that not only was this an economic development engine, but to be an economic development engine and to get businesses to even want to look in our area, we had to do a couple of things. We had to be safe. We had to really fight crime and make our area look better, because being a blighted area was part of the reason we were able to get the CRA. So for Mr. Brown's project, when I look at it like it's doing those three things. It's helping to create safety, it's helping to fight blight and crime, and when you do those things, you are more able to attract the kind of economic development you want to come to those areas. So in that respect, I believe that his project will have immense value. It may not have the economic value to begin, but it can help certainly be an attractor, be something that helps to attract the kind of economic development that he's looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. I have no one else in the queue for questions. Mr. Wendland, on page 2 of 3 of the 2017-03 resolution, I believe you had a comment about the particular provision, section 2.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I think we need to strike section 2. I would ask someone make that amendment. That actually, what we'll be doing is that $381,000. That was 15-16 money, as I described earlier. 16-17 is $458,373. But that gets dealt with in the next resolution. So I believe, and I've talked to OGC about this right before the meeting, I believe we need to, would recommend that someone offer an amendment to strike section 2.
I have a motion and a second on that particular amendment, and have no one in the queue to discuss it.
Well, we can fetch, yes, if we could get Ms. Grandin to explain it.
Okay, through the
For
chair.
those that's watching, maybe.
Yeah, okay, through the chair of the committee. Mr. Wendland was exactly right. This was superfluous language and doesn't need to be in there, so if we could just strike section 2, that would make the resolution better.
Great, thank you, Ms. Grandin. All in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Opposed? The amendment carries. I have a motion and a second on KSC CRA 2017-03 as twice amended. Ms. Boyer?
I'm sorry, and now you've got me confused on the money. So was there 381, 351 in the 15-16 budget that was put in the capital projects for this fund?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay. And then we have another resolution coming up that is the current year 16-17 budget that's taking funds and appropriating them. And then we have another resolution that's a 17-18 that's prospectively appropriating them.
And through the chair to Member Boyer, I think I would recommend to you then you keep the 16-17 money in there. In total, you'd have the 381 from 15-16, the 458 from 16-17. That'll give you, by my math, 839, 724. And then the 17-18 that doesn't have to be specified yet, we put that in the to be determined
Plan authorized
pot.
projects rather than in the capital fund where it is showing in that resolution. Got it. We're on the same page. I'll see you when we get there.
Okay, great. Okay, I have no one else in the queue. We're going to roll those amendments all into one. And if you could, is there any public comment on this resolution? Seeing none, please open the ballot and record your vote.
$15 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you've passed KSC CRA 2017-03. Moving on to KSC CRA 2017-04, which is the 16-17 amended budget.
Thank you. Again, this is the cleanup for 16-17. Not going to spend any time on your yellow sheets. Just know that you have that. The ad valorem in this case was down by $1,409, but because there was a balance in this account, there was interest earnings in this particular one of $1,621. So total revenues up by $212. The operating expenses are below budget, projected to be $25,387 below budget. And then again, you had the to be determined plan authorized projects of $432,774. That all goes into the proposed amendment, which would take $458,373 and put it into the Gateway Norfolk Sutel project that we just discussed.
Do I have a motion on this resolution? I have a motion and a second on 2017-04 for King Sutel Crossing. Ms. Boyer.
Mr. Wendland, I notice on the sheet you've prepared on the budget, you just say transfer out to Subfund 32V. And my understanding on another one of these is 32V is a combination of multiple tax increment district capital projects. So shouldn't we identify that this is transferred to the Sutel Norfolk
Through the chair, there is a footnote that deals with that. Footnote 1 does specify that, but if we need to do more, we can.
No, that's okay. As long as it's somehow in the system captured as to which amount goes with which thing. I don't like the fact that they're all combined in the same account.
Okay. I have no one else in the queue. Is there any public comment on Resolution 2017-04 for King Sutel Crossing? No public comment, Mr. Anderson?
Okay, thank you, the chair. Ms. Boyer, I'm just trying to make sure that everything is syncing up at this point. What I believe is happening is we are basically reserving the portion of the funding that could go to the expanded area, but it's not going to be formally approved until such time as the council has taken action. Is that correct?
That's more or less what I understood we did in the first resolution, where we said the project boundary, by definition, is the project that already exists in the plan.
Right.
But that in the event the City Council expands the boundary, then the scope of the project could expand. So yes. So these projects that we're allocating the funds to, the scope of the project could expand if we expand the boundary.
And I just want to go to the vice chair and make sure that that's your understanding as well.
Yes, it is through the chair. That is my understanding, and I'm pleased because what it does, it gives us an opportunity to move forward now, today, than wait until we go through the entire process. So I would like for the community to start to see some development, some change in that area. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no one for public comment or any other questions on the queue, please open the ballot to record your vote.
14 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you have passed KSC CRA 2017-04. KSC CRA 2017-05, which is this 2017-2018 proposed budget. Do I have a motion? I have a motion and a second on this resolution. Ms. Boyer.
So I'd like to offer an amendment on this one. So on Exhibit 1, page 1 of 2, about 3/4 of the way down the page, or 2/3, where it says transfers to other funds, rather than saying transfers out to TID Capital Project SF32V for 547,114, add that amount to the plan authorized projects, which is $1, and make that 547,115. And then that allows us the flexibility to add as much as we need or not to the other project during the course of the year, because we've already got $800,000 in it. That's the amendment.
I have a motion and a second on Ms. Boyer's amendment to transfer from the identified project to plan authorized projects. She is moving from transfers out to TID Capital Project SF32V, which is currently listed as $547,114. She is moving that amount into plan authorized projects, which is currently listed as $1. So the amount up by the transfers out is going to be changed to 0, and then the plan authorized project is going to be $547,115. I have no one in the queue. All in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Opposed? The amendment carries. I have a motion and a second on the resolution as amended 2017-05, and no one in the queue. Is there any public comment on this resolution? Seeing no public comment, please open the ballot and record your vote.
14 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you've passed KSC CRA 2017-05. Is there any new business? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Mr.
I just
Wendland.
real quickly, and appreciate very much the work Susan did on the research on some of the things associated with the boundaries. In that research, she noted some things that weren't material to what we did today, but there are some things that when the boundaries and other things were approved in 2008, quite frankly, she's notified us that we probably need to clean up. So at some point in time during the year, expect us to be back in front doing that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wendland. Okay, we are adjourning the King Sutel Crossing CRA meeting, and we are calling to order the JIA CRA board meeting for Tuesday, August 8th. We have being passed to us the copies that are front and back with the budget that we will work through as we make our way through the agenda. And I would like to recognize my vice chair for this particular CRA as Mr. Gaffney. With that in mind, let's move straight into the first amendment, which is JIA CRA 2017-05. Different from the prior two, this one is only for the quorum amendment. We had already taken care of the advertising amendment in our prior CRA meeting. I have a motion and a second on 2017-05 for JIA CRA, and no one in the queue. Is there any public comment on this particular resolution? Seeing no public comment, please open the ballot and record your vote.
14 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you've passed JIA CRA 2017-05. JIA CRA 2017-06, which is the 2016-17 amended budget, which we have in front of us in the new stapled copy. Do I have a motion for the JIA CRA 2017-06? I have a motion and a second. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, through the chair. This is a question I've been wanting to ask the whole time. So as one of the items on each of these, you've included travel. Tell us, how does that work?
Through the chair to Member Anderson, there's a Florida Redevelopment Association conference, and generally Karen and Susan go to that to keep up with the latest trends and what's going on with CRAs around the state.
And so what we do is we just build that into all the different CRA budgets?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I have no one else in the queue for the amended budget for 2016-17. Is there any public comment on this resolution? Seeing no public comment, please open the ballot and record your vote.
14 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you have passed JIA CRA 2017-06 for the 16-17 budget. Moving on to JIA CRA 2017-07, which is the 17-18 budget. Do I have a motion? I have a motion and a second. And Ms. Boyer.
Through the chair to Mr. Wendland, since we, in the prior budget, just added $130,000 to prepay the Ramco, I believe that's what it said, right? We were to be applied to Ramco debt service in 17-18. Has this been modified to reflect the reduction in Ramco debt service or to reflect the additional revenue somewhere? It doesn't show a transfer in, which in the prior budget, if I look at the prior one that we just approved, you showed a transfer in of $123,000 from the 15-16 pledge. So why would this not in the revenue show a transfer in of the 134 in the pledge?
Through the chair to the member Boyer, in conversations with the council auditor's office, we determined there was a better way. So if you look at the Ramco debt service next year, the actual debt service is $476,805. It is reduced by that $134,424, which will be in escrow. Really doesn't get transferred over. It gets transferred into a debt service reserve escrow. And so we just reduced the debt service payment out of the JIA fund next year to Ramco.
Thank you. I have no one else in the queue for this particular resolution. Yes, Ms. Boyer.
So my question again is with respect to, I don't see a footnote on this case on the transfer out to TID Capital Projects Subfund 32T. So it doesn't tell me what capital projects we're appropriating the money to. Can you tell me it? I mean, do it, because if it has to be completed within 3 years, I need to know what the project is.
Understand. My apologies. We can clean that up and put a footnote in there. That's for the project that was previously approved for the Armsdale Road and Duval Road project.
Thank you. Okay, I have no one else in the queue. Is there any public comment for Resolution 2017-07? Seeing no public comment, please open the ballot and record your vote.
$14 yeas, 0 nays.
By your action, you've passed JIA CRA 2017-07. Thank you. Is there any new business for JIA CRA? Seeing none, any public comment? No public comments? We are adjourned.